Hopefully that was enough time for you to get through that. So the next thing we're going to do is get started, and the first person will be Cynthia to introduce the new staff.
Thank you so much, Ross. Good morning, everybody. This morning, we want to welcome Erica Peterson as the newest SSIS business staff person. She's joining us as a child welfare subject matter expert, and we'll be working with my team on all of the fun, exciting child welfare support work that we do, including the front end of child protection, working on family first prevention, a new non-caregiver child protection track, as well as the SSIS review. So those of you that reach out to help desk and have some questions about child welfare issues that are kind of fun and maybe a little bit sticky, we'll have the opportunity to work with Erica. And so welcome, Erica, and we're glad you're here, and we are just thrilled to have some more resources to help support the work that folks are doing in local agencies. All right, this is me as well. We're getting right into the content. So folks may be aware, should be aware, we've had an update article as well as lots of conversation in other places that SSIS is going to be conducting a review of SSIS. In the last legislative session, we were allocated some funding and also directed to do a review of SSIS for really two main pieces. Firstly, to look at excessive data requirements, and then second, to review the applications for performance and stability, which, as folks are aware, we've had a minute run work group on that for about, I think 18 months, I want to say 2 years maybe at this point, as well as to make recommendations for modernizing SSIS. So our approach to doing this is really to conduct two separate but concurrent reviews of SSIS. Next slide. Thank you. All right, so first, the review of current data entry requirements. This is going to be conducted by myself, my team in SSIS Business Operations Unit. And we're going to be working to review all of the child protection proper workflows within SSIS. And our process for this is going to be to ensure that we are meeting with our stakeholders who are currently doing this work in the field at local agencies, whether it is intake, assessment, child protection, case management, having a group of workers, as well as other folks who are doing complementary work to that, right? I'm thinking about 4E and lots of other things that are required for child protection, to get feedback about the system and the excessive data requirements, functionality, usability, those kinds of things. We're also going to be meeting with our partners in child safety and permanency to have discussion about the review and their feedback related to SSIS and the requirements for their particular program areas within SSIS. And then again, we will be conducting a field-by-field review of each child protection work area. So, of course, we're going to be starting with intake and screening, and really reviewing every field that someone has to touch in order to get that particular part of the work done. And we'll be documenting for each field the legal requirements, really how usable is this data, what's the utility, what's the function of it, and then any design or performance issues that we may see, right? So too many clicks, those kinds of things. We'll have a review all of our initial findings with the folks that were involved, so our child protection caseworkers, mentors, child protection policy, other folks, and just kind of having a mini high-level review out for each of those areas that we review, and we will produce a final report out by May. And for the second portion of this is a performance, stability, and modernization review. Um, so for this, we are working very closely with our Minute partners and are going to be are in the process of working with them for two requests for offers, RFOs, that will be hopefully published in February. One for expert review of the existing SSIS architecture, really to look at performance and stability in our current system and to work hand in hand with the other work that we've been doing on an ongoing basis. And then finally, an expert review of all of the information that my team will have worked on to review child protection, and all of the work from really all of the avenues that we have existing. So all of the existing information, and we'll review the current and future states and make options for modernizing SSIS and specifically what a modernized platform might look like for SSIS. So if folks have any questions about that, you can always feel free to put something in the chat right now, or you can always send something into the help desk, and those any questions you might have can I'll make sure to they'll be directed to me, and I'll make sure to get back to folks as soon as I can. All right, so I see a question here. Are they creating a new SSIS, or are they going to look at existing platforms that might fill the need? Ashley, that's a great question. And so we're really looking at how we can modernize SSIS to meet the user needs, and so that is very open ended, and so that may be a transition onto a new platform of SSIS. It may be a lot of things. It's really not. They're part of the. I think for me, part of the joy in that review is that we really get to have that conversation again. We've declared that we're transitioning to become fully SSIS compliant, which with that carries a lot of requirements and really modern modular design that we're really excited about being able to meet interfaces, bidirectional exchanges, those kinds of things, with courts and Department of Education, those kinds of things. And this review will really help us determine what path we're going to take forward. So nothing has been decided yet. So part of the review requirements are that by June 30th, we will be reporting back to the Minnesota legislature really about three main things. So how did we ensure that we are having input from all of the stakeholders? And then our progress and completed efforts to streamline any data entry requirements and improve user experience, and the progress made to solicit and hire an independent consultant for the system evaluation. That's those two RFOs that Minute is working on. So that those all of those things will be included in our report to the Minnesota legislature this summer.
There's a question from Amy. What is the non-caregiver CP track project? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Amy. I can answer that for you quickly. So in the last legislative session, we had there were some legal changes that from our partners in child safety and permanency, and really supporting work around non-caregiver trafficking issues. And so what this will be is a new child protection response path within SSIS for those non-caregiver allegations. Right now, it would just be for our sexual abuse allegations, but in the future there may be other things such as labor trafficking. So right now we are working on that, and our focus is working to make sure that this is as really as user friendly as possible. Yeah, thank you so much, Amy. Your question, all sexual abuse or just trafficking? Yes, sex trafficking right now. That would really be the only um, allegation for that track. But as I said, in the future, it may include other things such as labor trafficking. And so we're working closely with our colleagues in child safety and permanency, as well as the non-caregiver work groups that have been going on for quite some time, which is led on the program side by Sarah Ladd.
All right, looks like I'm up. This is Erica Jepson. I am one of the other child welfare subject matter experts in SSIS business operations, not to be confused with Erica Peterson. So first up on my list is we're going to talk about this known defect. We've gotten several tickets into the help desk asking how to fix this data cleanup error, which shows that foster parents listed on the foster parent tab of the placement must match the individual providers listed within the BizOrg. This is a known defect and it is appearing on all placements, including ones without foster parents listed on the BizOrg, such as in residential programs. When this error appears on placements with no foster parents, nothing needs to be done. This error will go away when the placement is closed, and it won't prevent the worker from closing the placement or work group. This defect is scheduled to be fixed in our upcoming 24.1 SSIS release. Next slide. We've gotten several questions into the help desk about psychiatric residential treatment facilities. In the last couple of months, we thought we would take this opportunity to address PRTFs, how to know if the facility is a PRTF, and when to enter them in SSIS. PRTFs, or psychiatric residential treatment facilities, are not considered foster care as they are a hospital stay. No voluntary placement agreement is needed for a child or youth who is entering a PRTF. They will always appear as a location in SSIS. And we have included the link to our AFGAR's placement guideline, which outlines PRTF starting on page 10. Next slide. So some workers also question, like, how do you know if a facility is a PRTF? And in Minnesota, all PRTFs are licensed children residential facilities with a PRTF variance. I've included a screenshot of what a search for PRTF in Minnesota licensing information lookup should look like. The license type should be children's residential facility. Then under additional child residential facility, or CRF services, check the box next to psychiatric residential treatment facility, then click search. Then all of the children residential facilities with the PRTF variance will show up in licensing information lookup. Next slide. So since PRTFs always show up as a location, it is important to understand when to enter them into SSIS with a continuous placement. PRTFs should not be entered into SSIS with a continuous placement unless they are within a removal episode. It can be entered on the placement location absences screen for tracking purposes, and no continuous placement is needed since it will always show up as a location. We've included some scenarios. If the child youth is only in a PRTF, a voluntary placement agreement is not needed, and therefore no continuous placement should be entered into SSIS. In addition, no out-of-home placement plans or court reviews are required because it is not considered foster care. If a child youth is in a PRTF and the plan is for them to go to a different placement, such as foster home or residential program, then a voluntary placement agreement needs to be obtained for that subsequent placement. A continuous placement and placement needs to be entered in SSIS when they enter that subsequent placement. Out-of-home placement plan and court reviews are required for the subsequent placement. And finally, if a child or youth is currently in placement, such as in a foster home or residential program, then enters a PRTF and the agency continues with placement authority, whether court ordered or voluntary placement, the PRTF shall be entered. Out-of-home placement plans and court review requirements continue. That is all I have for PRTFs. Next slide. And I think this goes to Eric.
Hey everybody, this is Eric with Supervisor for User Support on the SSIS business section. We get a lot of help desk questions related to data fixes for transitioning children's mental health work groups. into adult mental health work group. And we've recently confirmed with policy that if kids are in extended foster care, they can stay in a children's mental health work group until the age of 21. Otherwise, workers will need to close the children's mental health work group and open an adult mental health work group should additional services be needed. So we do not perform data fixes on those transitions. And I just wanted to put that out here because this has been a question that's come in a handful of times. Next slide has to do with clearing. We get a lot of clearing questions. And from my understanding, both on the subject matter expert and the help desk side of things, is that it's really difficult to answer clearing questions without seeing specific examples in front. So I've included a couple of links from our worker documentation page on this slide for best practice tips for clearing, as well as clearing agency and state. But for those more in-depth questions or those more specific questions, we really rather have mentors send in tickets to the help desk so that our help desk staff and our subject matter experts can look at those a little more closely.
Eric, sorry to interrupt you, but back
Yep.
to the child mental health, there was a question from Myra. When entering time in SSIS, do you use child mental health as a program or adult mental health? I'm guessing that's going back to the question if the child is up till age 21.
Do any of our subject matter experts know the answer to that question? My assumption would be that if it's a child in extended foster care and we're keeping that children's mental health work group open, we would still be billing under children's mental health. But is there anybody on here that would refute that?
Yeah, this is Marsha. I would agree, Eric. That's exactly what I would have said. As long as it's CMH, as long as it's still CMH. So if they're up till 18 or if they're in extended, so that means through 21 and they're in CMH, then you would continue to document under CMH. Once they're past that, either not in extended, and so then no longer eligible for the CMH after age 18, they would need to be in an adult mental health work group, and they would need to be documented time under adult mental health.
Thanks, Marsha. And then we have some new functionality in SSIS related to backing up user settings and backing up grid settings. This kind of snuck in a more recent release, and training didn't have enough time to develop documentation when it rolled out. So this might be a day late and a dollar short, but nevertheless, job aid has been created for the new functionality related to backing up user settings and user grid settings. Instead of saving to a local agency drive, user settings and grid settings will now be backed up to the SSIS database and also retrieved from the database as well. Unfortunately, the functionality for backing up or restoring user spelling settings is not operational at this time. And if you're noticing, if you're an individual who likes to save grid settings and user settings and you're noticing any inconsistencies with this new functionality, we ask that you report it to the help desk so that we can process it and move it over to the individuals who are developing this functionality. And again, for more information on backing up and restoring user settings with this new functionality, you can go ahead and click the link on this slide or visit the worker documentation page under SSIS administration. Thanks. Have a great day.
Hi, everyone. This is Marsha Riss, the Change and Engagement Consultant with SSIS Business Operations, and I'm going to go through some updates regarding AFCARs, kind of let people know where we're at with submissions for updated AFCARs 2020. So before I do that, I like to give a little bit of information on AFCARs. Not everybody's really familiar with what it is, why it's important. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We did do a more comprehensive AFCARs history and overview last March. I'm not going to go into that level of detail today, but you can find that presentation and slides by going to the Coffee Talk archive link available from the SSIS resources page. Today, I thought it might be helpful to do a little refresher on what AFCARS is and why it's important before I update that status of the AFCARS 2020 work and recent submissions. AFCARS stands for the Adoption and Foster Care Analysis and Reporting System. The first AFCARS was passed in 1993 in response to federal statutory mandate for adoption and foster care data in Section 479 of Title 4E of the Social Security Act. So AFCARS 2, also commonly called AFCARS 2020, was introduced in 2016, but that final rule was executed in May 2020. Thus, you'll hear me refer to it often as AFCARS 2020. So this is the first revision to AFCARS. So obviously in quite a few years. So it's a big change. A lot of things were expanded, data elements that must be reported on. Next slide. So AFCARS was established to provide data that would assist in policy development and program management by policymakers at the federal, tribal, and state levels to assess the reasons why children are in foster care and to develop strategies to prevent their unnecessary placement into foster care. The feds also wanted to have readily available data to respond to requests for information from Congress, from the Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Inspector General, so OIG, national advocacy organizations, states, tribes, and other interested organizations that request data. Previously, there was no real established data collection for these. The feds saw the need to have reliable national data to help make data-informed decisions about their policies and potential strategies to prevent out-of-home placement and any number of issues related to foster care and permanency. The data has enabled the Children's Bureau to administer the federal 4E foster care and adoption assistance programs more effectively over time. It has helped our federal partners in determining and assessing outcomes for children and families through the CFSR. So that's the qualitative systemic reviews, such as the Children and Family Services reviews, so CFSR. Next slide. So the original AFCARS requirements from 1993 included only 103 total elements, which sounds like a lot until you look at our current elements. So there were 66 foster care elements and 37 adoption elements. At that time, SSIS was being developed when those were coming to fruition. And with that federal funding, along with or the same time that AFCARS requirements were being passed, so much of the system was initially designed for workers by workers with these specific federal reporting requirements in mind. With AFCARS 2020, there are now 220 total elements. So many of these are the same, but many are altogether new, and often they were added to add additional or further depth and detail to the existing elements, and some are also revised slightly. Minute and SSIS staff have been working for several years now to prepare SSIS for these changes. We are currently nearing the end of our AFCARS 2020 data file work, but we're still actually working on some of those items. Next slide. So most of the changes thus far have been indirect, more behind the scenes. So we worked wherever possible to extrapolate data needed from existing data fields. Though there have been some new and some revised fields, screen rules, and requirements, future changes that we're working on will be based more on assisting agencies to track and improve their required reporting. So we're almost done with that file work. However, we understand there's additional work. So we were rushing to do the file work and trying to get all of that done, which there was quite a bit of, especially to try to have the least impact on workers and end users that need to enter that data. So trying to grab what we can from what's already existing. However, there's additional work to be done, and that's going to be more in line with what tools can we give agencies to help them improve their reporting. So this may come in the form of newer updated tools, reminders and alerts, data cleanup items, screen rules to require data upon save or before another action can occur, things like that. Next slide. So there are 2 6-month report cycles that occur each year, with AFCARS 2020, so those 220 elements, needing to be reported out for all children with 1 day or more of an open continuous placement during the reporting period. The data reported also must include specific elements pertaining to all previous removals that the child may have had, so their entire history. The report cycles are based on the federal fiscal year. So we report for October 1st through March 31st. So 10/1/23 started our 24A cycle, which will end on 3/31/24. Agencies must have a placement and continuous placement start and discharge dates entered no later than 30 days after that placement or started or discharged. So we've talked about that before. I think we've talked about it like every couple of months for the last couple of years. That was a big change. It used to be 60 days. Now you really only have 30 days. Transaction dates for when start and end dates are entered into SSIS for both continuous placements and placements are tracked automatically in SSIS, and those are not editable. So it's automatically looking at when does that worker at the agency enter it into SSIS. That's what we're talking about for this. These are required to be entered timely. So enter that start date no later than 30 days after the placement starts and the continuous placement starts. Enter the end dates or discharge dates no later than 30 days after the placement or continuous placement discharges. And entries outside of 30 days results in errors. If the state has more than 10% in error, not timely, these are not timely, this results in a non-compliant file for the entire out-of-home care AFCARS file submission. So 1 element is all it takes for us to be out of compliance. Between April 30th, 2024 and May 15th, 2024, those are the dates, so that 15, 16 days that we'll always have. Those are the dates we're preparing and submitting our AFCARS reports via upload to the feds. So we give you that 30 days after the end of the report period to make sure everything's entered, because that's how much time that you should have. The 30 days to enter those placements and discharges for timeliness. Everything should be entered as soon as possible, however, to make sure that we're making those timelines. Next slide, please. So I have a bit of information on here. It looks like a lot to me, but the 23A submission. So we have really 3 submissions that we're still looking at, right? So the 23A submission, that one is our first one for AFCARS 2020 that's fully complete. So with all the new elements that we're still working out some of the kinks on for some of the work on those. But that was our first submission, and you always get a resubmission up to 6 months later. So once you're past that 6 months after the initial submission, you cannot resubmit to avoid penalties. So we've done that. We were non-compliant, so that you can see that 23A submission and the resubmission were both non-compliant for elements. At that time, at our resubmission, we were non-compliant for 22 of the 220 elements. In our 23B submission, we've cut that down a little bit, and I think we're actually cutting that down a little further before our resubmission. But at the time of our initial submission for 23B, we were out of compliance with 19 elements. 24A submission, that's the upcoming submission. So we will have upcoming both our 24A submission as well as our final 23B submissions. So we still want you to make sure that you're entering things, getting everything you can. Hopefully we can cut some of that non-compliance and of course the goal being compliance. Items that require 100% compliance include items that impact the data integrity of identifying information. So things such as duplication issues, legal versus financial responsibility is a big one. So a reminder here, only financial responsible agencies should have a continuous placement entered for a child. The legal responsible agency, if you're not also the financial responsible agency, may enter a location but should not have a continuous placement, or else it creates a data integrity issue such as duplicate that must be corrected. So some of you may have already been contacted by us in the last 6 months as we were working out some of those kinks. That is 100% that element for the duplication piece is a 100% accuracy element. So if we have one item, we will be non-compliant, one item where there's that duplication. So that's really important to make sure that you're knowing, are you the legal or financial responsible agency? If you're both, of course, you're going to follow the same rules for the financial responsible agency. You're going to make sure those things are entered in your agency. If you're just legal, do not enter a continuous placement. The majority of items require 90% accuracy. So I believe, I don't have it in front of me, it's something around 12 elements that are 100% accuracy. They're things like, child's identifying information and that duplication piece. But otherwise, the majority of the items require 90% accuracy. A common type of error, a data error that agencies can work on that we're finding are, of course, the missing data. So between missing data and timeliness of entries for those continuous placements and placements, those are where we want to make sure people are focusing. So penalties, Minnesota has for sure incurred a penalty for 23A. We're past that resubmission date. Officials are still discussing how this and possible future penalties that are incurred by Minnesota will impact agencies. So I don't have that information at this time, but once more details are available for that, communications will be sent out. Next slide, please. So where AFCARS 1993 did not result in financial penalties, I think many of us who have been around a while have heard, there was always kind of that overlying threat that there could be penalties, but there wasn't. For AFCARS 2020, it's very clear when penalties will be incurred and how the feds will make sure that those are happening. So it's almost an automated process. So we will for sure, if we're out of compliance, have penalties incurred. So compliance is calculated for each individual element. If one or more element compliance score is below the threshold, so like I said, most are requiring that 90% validity, then the entire file is considered non-compliant and penalties will be assessed unless corrected prior to the resubmission deadline. So timeliness errors, of course, are not able to be corrected at any time. That is an automated piece. So once it's late, it's late. There's no going back and fixing that. So if you're out of compliance on a timeliness element right from your initial submission, then we're going to be out of compliant. There's no fixing those. So we want to make sure that those are, number one, making sure that agencies are entering those as timely as possible. But missing data may be entered, or internal consistencies may be corrected to bring the file into compliance if done so prior to that final submission. So some agencies, like I said, already may have been contacted by myself or others from SSIS for significant issues such as overlapping continuous placement episodes for a child between one or more agencies. So remember, only that financial responsible agencies should have a continuous placement entered, as they are the agency of record. Legally responsible agencies may enter locations for tracking purposes, but if they're not financially responsible, they should not enter open a continuous placement. Penalties from the feds will be a reduction from the state's Title IV-E foster care grant award. Penalty amounts increase over time if there are subsequent non-compliant files in a row. So DHS, like I said, is currently reviewing this and what it will mean for DHS and the reporting agencies. Further communications will be made available once we have more information on how those penalties will be assessed. If you want more information on how the feds are assessing them towards the states, so you can get a little bit of feeling for why we don't have all the answers yet, I did post that compliance and penalties bulletin on this slide. Next slide. So I also posted on this slide the updated AFCARS 2020 technical bulletins. All of them can be found on the Children's Bureau website, so it goes through all of the various elements as well. The Office of Administration for Children and Families, ACF, so AFCARS technical assistance page. So this particular page has, how we're constructing our file. It has all of the elements listed that we have to report upon. And then it also goes through things like what types of errors, how the errors look, and as well as the penalty and compliance, how those are configured. So it has a lot of information out there. Next slide, please. So as we're talking about AFCARs, one of the things that I've really been wanting to focus on now that we're getting close to finishing up that file is how do we help agencies make sure that they are entering them? How do they have the tools that they need, and what types of tools do they need to help them at the agency level ensure that the information is being entered, ensure that they are able to track that and look at, who's struggling and can we follow up on those kinds of things. So we're looking to gain more input from agencies on how to best assist to improve AFCAR's related data entries. So previously we used the repository for this. So those of you, and not everybody is always aware of what the repository is. It's called different things at the agency. It might be AFCAR's errors, it might be other terms, whatever, each agency has their own, but somebody at your agency should be reviewing that repository, running that. When the work started on AFCARS 2020, some of the repository items, so years ago, some of those repository items were removed as they were no longer relevant for the AFCARS 2020. And we have yet to do a lot of work on updating the repository since we were working on the file, making sure we had the elements. So before we add there, we want to get a little bit of agency input. So the bulk of how we currently ensure AFCARS compliance for specific data entry into SSIS by agency workers has been by using a combination of SSIS required fields and screen rules, along with the repository errors that agencies are expected to track and follow up on to ensure AFCARS and other reporting was being completed. With AFCARS 2020, the addition of the new elements and revisions to AFCARS data reporting requirements and the real financial penalties that will begin to impact Minnesota with continued noncompliance, we want to really be sure that we're doing what we can to help agencies have the tools they need to ensure the required timely data entry for all AFCARS elements. In that vein, I'm looking for a little bit of input today, and I'm going to put a poll up. So we're looking for input from agency workers and mentors, those who are familiar with what's currently being done at your agency in regards to repository type errors, and what your preferences are for tools that might work best for you in your agency. So I've already been reaching out to some agencies, trying to get some preliminary data. And here's kind of what I'm finding so far is, there's kind of a few different things that people are thinking of, but looking to get a little bit wider span of what might be useful. So here's the options. I'm going to throw this poll up, not yet, so don't throw it in the chat yet. So we're looking at using existing SSIS repository reporting, update with the new AFCARS errors, and to help agencies track and correct issues prior to submissions. That might be one option, right? So some drawbacks to this method. Some drawbacks might be that oftentimes only one or a couple of people actually run the repository or have access to the repository, and then you're reliant on them having to run that data and then report out or communicate that with whomever else in the agency might need to fix the missing information. Another option is to create either a report or multiple reports, possibly using SSIS general reports to track the various AFCARS elements. So this might allow agencies more access to the tracking of each element and less reliance on a few persons that would usually be responsible for managing like the repository. So more access is really the big thing on there. However, one of the drawbacks might be is, again, it's oftentimes if there's more access and there's not somebody specified at your agency to follow up like there is for the repository, everybody thinks somebody else is doing it, right? And so it might fall to the wayside and not be a priority. And so those are things to think about. Another option that we're looking at is possibly utilizing Tableau to create one or a series of general reports. So similar to using it in general reports, Tableau, one of the pluses for us using that would be we can do it a little bit quicker. So agencies will likely have some of those reports or a report to look at the AFCARS items a lot quicker than what we can do for updating the repository and certainly for creating brand new general reports. So a drawback of that one, similar to the repository, is many agencies are limiting who has access to Tableau. So like the repository, you would need to ensure a process is in place where someone or someones, maybe multiple, are using Tableau to get at, review, and follow up on the errors, similar to how they've been doing them with the repository. So we could possibly get you something a little quicker. However, you kind of got to do it similar to the repository method now, but they'd have to learn Tableau if they're not familiar with that already. And then lastly, really looking at what other ideas might you have. So other ideas for tools that you think would be helpful at getting at, reviewing, tracking, and following up on AFCARS data. So if you're going to indicate other, when I put this poll up, go ahead and do that. And then I will follow up with a second poll so you can enter some free text. So just FYI, if you're doing that, then I would hope that you also enter the free text on that second poll. So I am going to post a poll here.
Looks like we have a question, Marcia.
All
Is there a
right.
more current version of the DHS SSIS project repository tips and fixing AFCARS errors than the one we have from February 2009?
Oh, Janice, that's a good question. You know, there isn't that specific document that's been updated. I know with AFCARS 2020 and all the work that they've been doing and are not quite finished, we've been holding off on updating some of that. So we had started and then we said, whoa, we're not even done with what we need. And so we'd have to redo that. So there really isn't at the moment. I will say that I believe if it's not that one, there are some other repository and AFCARS related documents listed on the SSIS worker documentation page that you can also look at. And some of them at the bottom of them have some other links that are also helpful. And I think they're a little bit newer. They might be, again, pretty old, maybe like 9 years old, 9, 10 years old. So you might want to look at those. They're still useful for what's out there. They're not useful, of course, for the new items. And so we will be looking at updating all of these as well. We just really needed to finish up that file work first so we knew what new elements and what things we were putting in and how we were doing that before we could actually go forward with updating that. And then, of course, the other piece of it is we're not sure if we're continuing with the repository at the moment. So if we don't, then we might do something different and not have, repository tips kinds of things. So good question. I don't have a great answer telling you that there's something great and new out there, but that's what I have.
Next question from Mary Doherty is missing data is added for AFCARS. How quickly would it show up in Tableau? Same day?
Yeah, that's something that we'd have to talk about. So that's a really good question. That's something that I think most agencies who would look at Tableau are going to want. So we'd definitely be talking about what can we do to update that sooner, because I think now a lot of that data is not updated daily, and so that is a problem. But that's something we would talk about as well if we went the Tableau route on what can we do to increase that.
Last question so far from Myra. How would someone working on the SSIS repository catch that there is another agency financially and or legally responsible other than gathering information from the worker?
That's a good question. I believe that they would have to be getting that information from the workers. Workers should be entering that information in SSIS. Whomever's entering the placement data should definitely know who are they financially responsible or not. So whether that be one person at your agency who gets that information from the worker or the workers entering it themselves, the workers really should have that information. Any other ones you see out there, Shauna? My chat is really tiny right now.
Nope, that's the last one that's there right now. Oh,
great. Oh, go ahead.
Gonna prove me wrong just as I said it.
That's all right.
Jody says, I work with AFCARS. I'm responsible for checking and running and read results. It's in my calendar for every month. What is the monthly foster care amount and where should I be looking?
Oh, that's a good question. So you're talking about that specific error. I don't have the error numbers in front of me, but the monthly foster care amount is looking that a payment has been made. So there are some instructions on one of the documents, and I don't have them in front of me, Jody, but if you send me a email on that, I can follow up, or send the help desk and they'll send it over to me. I can follow up and point you to the right direction. I know that there is some instructions on how to handle that. Really, the system's looking at if you have a placement that doesn't have the little checkbox saying another agency is financially responsible, that there is a monthly paid amount each month. Now, of course, those things that haven't yet had a payment on them, because it's because maybe it's early, it just happened, so it's in the system, but we haven't made a payment yet. Those are going to pop up there as well. So there are some instructions on kind of how to look at those, so that you can, know which ones to ignore because we just haven't made a payment yet. But yeah, I can send you that information. I can go back and find the resource. I know there's something posted because I've sent it out to others before. So go ahead and send that in. Good question. Any other? Oh yeah, 426. Thanks, Jody. Yep, I recall it.
Looks like Mary asked, could you send that to everyone? Becky agreed,
Yeah.
yes, please.
Yeah, we can add it. I can make sure that it gets added so that it gets posted with our updated slides. I can get that out. Yep.
Then Mary Doherty, repository could be rerun same day and can see if data that was added fixed the missing data on repository.
Correct. Yep.
I don't know if I want to say it, but so far that's it.
That's all right. Well, in the meantime, and people can continue. Remember, I said I was gonna post that second poll. So I'm going to stop this one. I think we're at the time limit for it. So let's go to the second poll, and I'm going to open that one up. So that was, if you clicked on other ideas or tools that might be helpful, you have some other idea, I'm always open to those, and we can, discuss those further, but I'd love to hear from anybody else who's got an idea. So go ahead and put that out there. So there should be a second idea or a second poll now that says other ideas or tools and allows you to enter text. So you're welcome to do that. And then you're welcome to enter any other things in the chat. Otherwise, that's what I have. And I think we can leave this poll open and continue to move on. Thanks, everyone. Back to you, Ross.
Thanks, Marcia. Good presentation there. Whew, a lot of good information. Just a reminder of your resources where you can find more of this type of information. Also wanted to point out real quick that if you haven't been into County Link in a minute, it's been changed to now Partner Link. So it just changed the name. Everything else, the way it looks and functions and everything is the same, but the name has changed from County Link to Partner Link. Mentor of the Month.
I think that's me. I'm not seeing that slide. Are you on the Mentor of the Month slide?
Oh, wait a minute.
There it is. Thank you. Oh, you had it for a second there. I might have a little lag. Perfect. Thanks, Ross. Okay, so Mentor of the Month. And forgive me, Plamen, if I'm saying your name wrong. Plamen Dimitrov of Cook County is our January Mentor of the Month. Plamen is a fiscal mentor from Cook County. His thoroughness helped bring to attention a problem within a brass code that wasn't set up properly to convert seeker units, so something that we're now working to have corrected. Since he became a fiscal SSIS mentor not too long ago, for SSIS, he also worked with other mentors at his agency to put on an in-person Q&A technical assistance sessions with our staff from DHS SSIS Business Operations team for the Cook County staff. He also set up time and met with virtually with our fiscal SMEs to ensure that he was maximizing claiming for his agency. Plowman, we appreciate your diligence and attention to detail, and we just want to say thank you to Plowman and Cook County. If you have a special SSIS coordinator or mentor that you would like to see recognized at an upcoming Coffee Talk for Mentor of the Month, please send your nomination to Heidi Morris along with a brief message on why you think they should be the next Mentor of the Month. Thanks.
I got a little bit quick on the draw there with taking you to the Mentor of the Month. So I'm going to go back one and at least just talk about where you can find this Coffee Talk and any of the past Coffee Talks. So and where you can get more information about this Coffee Talk, which would be the help desk at the dhs.ssishelp@state.mn.us. And then the Coffee Talk webinar recordings and reference materials will be at the Child Welfare Training Academy's website that's listed on this page as well.
Just
So
to
back
add a note that came from chat, sorry, Ross.
Go ahead.
They're asking if we could provide a copy of the DHS SSIS project repository tips and fixing AFCAR's errors from February 2009 to everyone, so they have that handy. Marcia, thinking that was kind of towards what you were talking about adding.
Yeah, just Stacy, I see that one. Thank you so much, Shauna. I didn't see that. So I see it now though. And Stacy, you can find that. I'm just gonna post the link. So it is under the AFCAR section on our SSIS worker documentation page. So I'm posting that link right now. And also there are additional resources, not just under the AFCAR section, but also under the repository section of this page. So you should be able to see some information there for both. Oh, and I should say, actually, I don't think we have a repository section. We have it under tools is repository reports. So both AFCARs and under tools for our SSIS worker documentation page has those information and that particular item.
All right, then the last thing we need to talk about, I guess, is saving the date for the next February Coffee Talk. So that's going to be statewide release 24.1. It'll be Tuesday, February 20th, 2024 at the regular time, 9 to 10:30. And more information will be coming out soon regarding it. So we want to thank you all for taking the time to come to this coffee talk. We hope you got good information from it and useful. And we'll see you next time. Stay golden, Minnesota. Radio Ross out.